ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਮੈਂ ਕਮਲਜੀਤ ਕੌਰ lady singer of Wimbledon. I brought some interview again. The program is UK Sandesh, which is shown every Tuesday at 9 p.m. on Sikh channel. Thank you very much for watching the previous one. This is a new effort that Sikh channel has been is very interested in making this, and we are really grateful because many people appreciate Lord Singh's talks, and he is our guest again. Lord Inderjit Singh ji, welcome.
Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh.
Welcome to the program again. And this week, the program you're going to talk about is a Sikh prison chaplaincy. Could you tell me, when did you start this chaplaincy and how difficult it was? Because there were chaplaincies for Christians and Jews, but no other faith. And I do remember meeting a Muslim in charge of the chaplaincy, and he was saying it's all due to Lord Singh that we've got this chaplaincy.
When I first started, I think it's been 35 years or more. At that time, there were very few Sikhs in prison. And there were a lot of English people who wanted to keep long hair and claimed to be Sikhs. And so that's when I was asked to give advice. After a while, it was then a totally Christian Anglican chaplaincy, where Catholics were allowed, Jews were allowed, but it was run as an Anglican chaplaincy. And I and then a Muslim and later a Hindu were invited to attend the meetings. It was a long table. We were sat at one end, and all the Christians and Jews and others were discussing things together at the other end. If any of us, myself or the Muslim, raised a question, they would look at us as, who are they to be talking in our meeting? And the chaplain general had this aggressive look, and he frowned on us. But being Sikhs, you just go on, pushing on. Yeah. And then we had the political prisoners come in after 1984. Yeah. So things got more, there was more work. Now, I started this Sikh chaplaincy single-handed. And then the only way I could get someone to visit different prisoners in different parts of the country was to look at my subscribers to the Sikh Messenger and other people I knew and phone them and plead with them, can you visit this person in prison and look after them? And it carried on from there. It was very, very difficult for years and years. And
because I do remember there used to be many reports coming that the Sikhs are being harassed to convert.
Yes.
They were being pushed, and nothing was being done because prison officers, they didn't bother, they didn't care. So much harassing that I remember a woman coming and crying that my son is in the prison and he's been harassed so much that he was willing to die because they want to convert him to Islam, want him to cut his hair and things. Please help.
Yeah, it was very difficult. We had all those problems. Worse, when sometimes you phone someone and you don't know who they are at the other end of the line. Oh yes, I visit Sikhs in prison. I found that some of those who were claiming to be Sikh chaplains weren't even Sikhs.
Yes.
So it was difficult, but slowly we got better and better. And I think it's about 10-15 years ago, there was a new chaplain general, totally new and very interested in different religions. He'd lived with Sikhs, he appreciated Sikhs. His first words when he saw me were Sat Sri Akal.
Yeah.
So quite a change from what used to exist.
Yeah.
And he, helped by me and others, set up a chaplaincy council where we could talk about our problems and so on. And he did a lot of work in that direction. He was very good and willing to listen. There were problems because at first all the chaplains were sessional chaplains. They were invited to come in for 2 hours, give a service, go away again. Now, the difficulty there is they had no employment rights. They could be sacked at any time. And also, they did not get to know the prison system.
But say, to begin with, you sent prisoners, you sent people to look after the prisoners. They were not paid. Now they are paid.
They were paid only for travel, not as and for being there.
So now those are sessional prisoners. They are paid for travel, and they're paid something for being there as well.
If they're given 6 hours, they're paid for 6 hours.
Yes.
But if before, they would be just paid for going there, traveling and being there, but not very much, a very low wage.
Yeah. But in that means perhaps the prisoners in the prison might not see what you call the chaplain, Sikh chaplain, because of the chaplaincy. But ours would be like Gyaniji or Kathakar or any. That means they will see only once a while. It wasn't a regular thing.
We managed to get that to every prisoner should have a service once in a week, 2 hours. But 2 hours was the time allocated.
Yes.
But that is not enough. And there was no one who could make a career out of just spending 2 or 3 hours. So what we got were people who didn't know the system, weren't very interested in the prison system, but could just do part and give some solace that way. So that was there for a long time. And there were also all sorts of other difficulties with food, with diet. Now, after a lot of plugging away at the system, I got the catering department to agree that on all Sikh festival days, holy days, you could have langar, which initially was brought into the prison, and now they can prepare it within the prison. Also, of course, for every service, they were allowed to bring in kara prasad. So that was a big improvement. Then the other things, at first, people said, you can't, there was the question about Sikh symbols. And obviously people would say that you can't wear a kirpan, which makes sense when you've got prisoners, for the prisoners. And although some Sikhs were arguing outside, no, they're Gursikhs, they should be allowed to wear kirpans, which is just a nonsense.
Well, because I do remember when there was a Punjabi Subha Morcha, there were thousands of Sikhs in prisons, and the day the first thing they would do was arrest Master Tara Singh, and the same time they'll arrest my father because he was a secretary of the Shromani Committee, and without him everybody would be stand still, and that's what the government wanted. But I'm just coming to the. I do remember, I was a little girl, but I do remember when my father was released, he said, hold on, I have to go and get my kirpan. So Master Tara Singh, everybody's kirpans were taken off. They weren't allowed to keep that. Is this still happening here? So they're not allowed to have kirpans during...
The prisoners are not allowed, and there's very good reasons, because a Sikh might be a smaller man, and they're really ugly, great big brutes in prison. They could just take the kirpan off him and use it to kill a prison warder or something like that. So it doesn't make any sense. So we argued against that. We agreed that shouldn't be. But the Gyanis, the Sikh chaplain, can wear a kirpan, and we agreed to the length. It's for about 5 inches, but it must be worn under the clothes. So that is the compromise. That was quite an achievement. Then there was the question of food and halal, which is served in prisons. Now, the English people don't mind too much what they eat. For us, eating halal is considered totally wrong. It's against the teachings of religion. And after negotiating with the catering department there, I managed to get them to agree that if halal is provided at any time, a non-meat halal option must also be there. And now that is a big improvement on the rest of society, because in so many schools and public catering,
Yeah.
they say, if you don't like halal, just bring sandwiches.
That's right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
the dietary requirements of other people should be respected.
Yeah, so that's something good. But just explain that to me again. When a prisoner, a Sikh prisoner, whether Amritari or not, but has a turban and beard, what happens? Are they allowed to wear the turban? Because somebody was saying to me, it might be wrong, that it's dangerous to have a turban because they can hang themselves or something like that. So what happens? Are they allowed to wear turbans?
The turban is allowed. Yes.
Is allowed.
Yeah.
So they trust the prisoners that way they and they are allowed to wear the kara.
They're allowed to wear kara, but there's a fashion these days for some people to wear great big thick karas. Now there was a big argument over that. Some prisoners were insisting, we want this great big thick kara. No, I said, the kara is a symbol. Why not a small kara?
Yeah.
And that is what's agreed.
Yeah. So as far as if they were Amritari, they're okay. They've got everything except the kirpan. So what about how many Gurpurubs they are allowed to celebrate?
There's about 5 main Gurpurubs.
Yeah.
And people can visit as well, but catering is provided, and all the Sikhs come together. Very often people from other communities join them as well.
In. I remember a couple of years ago on Guru Arjan Dev's Shidi Gurupurab, went to take the langar for the prisoners. I think and they were all the prison wardens and others, and they came very respectfully. They joined the commemoration, or we always say celebration, because we celebrate the Guru's life. They all joined in and were quite respectful. It was a sort of, there were too many prisoners. I was a bit shocked. I said, why so many prisoners in this prison? It's not a nice thing to have so many prisoners. How many did you have to start off, and where they are? What are the reasons? Why they're in prisons?
They have gone up. At one time, there was less than 300 Sikhs in prisons in the whole country.
And that was the smallest number in comparison to the other religions?
It was smaller in comparison, but they are now, there's about 500 or 600, which is bad and something that we're concerned about. But compared to other religions, they're still better, although not wonderful, because I think the Jewish as a proportion, the Jewish and Hindus as a proportion of the population probably have slightly fewer, not much difference. Muslims have far greater numbers, whereas might be about 500, there must be more than 12,000 Muslims in prison. Now that has its own difficulties because they get special arrangements, they get extra visits. There is many of those who are in prison are there for extremist offences, and they try and convert other people. And if they're getting a better meal than someone in prison, they don't care too much.
That's right.
There is a danger.
I do remember the biggest worry when you started the prison chaplaincy was conversion of Sikh prisoners there. And but there are some prisoners who are not really criminals. They are here because they've overstayed their stayed in this country, and they have no visas, they have no passports, they've lost their passports, and that they are in prison as well. How many roughly would that be? Number would be, because it is worrying, the numbers going up for 500.
I don't know the exact number, but I wouldn't be surprised at 100
would be those
in prison.
And the other now you got 2 full-time prison chaplains, is it? One is Gagandeep.
Gagandeep was appointed, I think, about 12 years ago.
Yeah, might
he
be
was
more.
the first Sikh chaplain, and he's full-time chaplain. He's done very well. He's shown that he can do things properly and understand the prison system. So that is great. And now there's, I think, 2 more, I think, Sikh chaplain. Ajmer Singh is responsible for the Midlands and the north of England, and Gagandeep is now responsible for
the south,
London and the south, under my directorship.
Yeah.
So it is getting into a proper organisation.
So what do you do about, see, the idea for the chaplains is to go and teach prisoners about Sikh religion, about Sikh, so that they don't commit the crime again.
Yeah.
And I know you've said many times that we don't have repeat offenders, or not many,
Yeah.
whereas other religions, people go out and they come back, or non-religions, they commit the same crime again and come back. But what about the numbers, would you say, and how do you look after those?
Well, there's two things, two duties for a prison chaplain. One is to give immediate support, because people in prison will obviously feel low, they'll miss their relatives, they'll be despondent. You have to boost them up and get them back into their religion and be aware of society and want to, when they go out, to do something more positive. So that is one thing. And so that prayer, kirtan and part is very important. But the end objective is, as I keep stating, is that any Sikh who goes in prison should never go in again. That chaplain is failing if we can't do that. Now, it's not really the fault of just of the chaplains, because society has to adopt. In one place, that when someone was taking Krab Prasad for prisoners, someone shouted from the Gurdwara, "Why do you want to give them Krab Prasad? They're in prison." Now, we've got to take a much more enlightened attitude about these things, that look to the people in prison. They are human beings, they're fellow Sikhs. Guru Nanak helped and talked to people who had led evil lives.
Yeah.
He wanted to make them stand on their own feet in a much more responsible way.
Yeah.
Now, there must be, I think the prison population in this country must be about 80, 90,000, something like that, which is a huge amount. But most of them are there for reoffending. About half of them keep coming in again. They're released. They can't get a job. They can't get housing. Their friends and relatives are no longer friendly to them.
Yeah.
So what do? They'll commit some silly crime and go back inside again. So what we want to do for Sikhs, and I think we are succeeding, is putting such emphasis on rehabilitation, keeping links with gurdwaras and with society, making every arrangement that a Sikh leaving knows where they're going to sleep the next night, has some sort of accommodation, and also what they can do to get a job, to get reasonably employed. And the gurdwaras and society and family all need to help this. So part of the duty of the Sikh chaplain is to look to those things. And I think so far the reoffending rate for Sikhs is much smaller than other communities. So we are succeeded, and that is a huge saving for the country.
Exactly. How many chaplains have you got, and what do they go and do? Have you got any system, or anybody can go and teach whatever they feel like? Or is there, you got a systematic teaching from the Guru Granth Sahib, or is there any?
And that's a very important point, because at one time some of the people who ended up in prison were from different sects, and what they were saying was, our sect should be responsible. There should be responsibility for looking after our sect as a different sect, and we want to eat out of iron vessels and things like that. And then we said that no, if you want to eat out from the iron vessels, we'll give you the vessels. We provide those. But if you say that we will only eat food prepared by someone from our sect, forget it. We can't do that. And so we've now I've written something to show that Sikhism is taught in prison and as practiced in prisons must keep to the Guru Granth Sahib, the teachings of the Guru Granth Sahib and the Gurus, and the original version of the Rat Maryada. Now, that is what we teach. Now, if a chaplain, when a chaplain is appointed, they're made to look at that. If they don't agree with it, then sorry, we can't appoint you, because we are there as Sikhs.
So there's a system that Guru Granth Sahib is our Guru, the teachings of the Guru Granth Sahib, and the Rat Maryada to implement that. How many chaplains have you got?
There must now be about 40 or 50.
Okay. Well, but they are all sessional.
No, the sessional is, it's now in transition time. The sessional is going out because of some court case somewhere else where people are exploiting people on a sessional basis. Nothing to do with the prisons. But that was happening. So now there is a law that everyone who works in that sort of way must be employed. So we're trying to get maximum hours, so that it's not just for the service they go in, but they go in to learn about the system, provide educational facilities and similar. Now, fortunately, I'm now being helped by Gagandeep Singh and Ajmer Singh, who are both very experienced and are doing a lot of work in that direction. But it's always an uphill struggle because we're a small community and we don't get the facilities that the larger communities get. So I'm always arguing.
And so it's all with the government, you're always arguing. And then you provide good cars, you provide books on Sikhism for people to sort of many libraries in each prison.
We do provide literature. And we also have to be very careful because literature gets into prisons purporting or pretending to be Sikhism that is quite anti-Sikh. So we have to look at the literature first before we accept it, but that is being done, and it's being done very successfully. And I think it's very encouraging. We had a prison chaplaincy conference last week, last Thursday and Friday, and the training is now much better. All sorts of realistic problems about what happens in prisons was discussed. I mean, there's a big issue of self-harming, which is, while it's there in outside society, people can be at a very low ebb, and suicides in prison are very common. So the chaplain must be able to recognize if someone's at a low ebb. It is the duty of anyone, any human being, particularly the duty of Sikhs, to lift them up, to help them.
Yeah, that's right. And how many sort of prisons there are that you got 40 chaplains, and can they manage? So they must be going more in more than one prison?
Yes, they go to more than one prison. They have to do that. But
we try and
arrange it so that they don't have to travel too far. But we want more hours. I think it's fair that they should be given more hours, but these administrators talk about budgets. We've now also got the system has managing chaplains for a prison. You have a managing chaplain that helps allocate hours and looks after the chaplain. Now that has difficulties because if the manager is a Muslim or a Christian, they may not be sympathetic to Sikhs. It's so easy, it's almost natural, but it's not helpful. Now we've got one managing chaplain, Pritpal Singh Martin. He is in Manchester, and he's doing a wonderful job. He's recently got a couple of awards for his work.
Very good. The other thing is, because I answer some of your calls, and they say that any chaplain who wants to come, any person, any Sikh who wants to become a chaplain, it takes a long time to get the permission. What is that about?
And that is, today everyone is over-obsessed with security and safeguarding and all that. And while it's bad enough for people outside to go into a school or anywhere, it's hard. In prison it is much harder. And I feel it's harder than it ought to be. I think there's quite a level of bureaucracy which I'm challenging at the moment because it shouldn't take. In one case it was more than a year. That is wrong.
So they check thoroughly.
Yes.
So even I remember going as a visitor, they had checked everything, going just for for an hour or so to go and speak to the prisoners. I think they check everything. So sometimes people complain, oh, it's taken too long, but I think they got to understand. So what you're saying is, so far, the prison chaplaincy has come a long way up and is moving better. And what's your next aim? What you want to do there?
The end aim for prison chaplaincy is to make sure that anyone who goes in by mistake does not go back in. But the reasons why people get into prison these days are sometimes the sort of marital affairs, and also a big cause is drink, which is totally against Sikhism, but it is there particularly in places like Southall and parts of the Midlands. So we've got to tackle that before people get into prison.
It's really the community and the Gurdwaras need to help to stop that, so that we don't have any Sikhs in prisons. That's really the... And then when they come out, perhaps the families should be a little more generous to support them.
They must, yes. And if the family can't, we should look for other support.
That's right. Okay. Thank you very much, Lord Singh. We learned quite a bit of the prison system. I know those who are in prisons, the families are very upset, and they have a reason to be. But we are hoping that any Sikh prisoner that comes out of the prison should never go back again.
Yeah.
Actually, no Sikh should be in a prison. That's our aim.
That should be the aim.
Thank you very much for coming. And Waheguru Ji Ka
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.